What a dumpster fire of an interview that was with Kamala Harris and Fox News. Brett Baer did a great job with giving her a toughest interview yet, but I want to jump right into some highlights. Shout out to the Vigilant Fox for always coming with the best clips. Let's check it out.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that...
The point is, of the question that he asked, the point he wants to know how many have been released into the country since you have been in power.
That we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions...
I'm not finished. We have an immigration system...
It's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came...
You were not beginning to answer the question. You were dancing around the question which he asked. There's more on immigration. This was in my opinion, a terrible answer that she gave on these tragic situations that happen because of illegal immigration under her watch.
Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And
again, this is always their go-to. This is always Trump's fault. Trump killed the border bill. We would have had a secure border, but Trump called his buddies up and killed the border bill. It's always his fault. She never answers the question directly. How about saying, yes, this is a tragedy, and I wish we had done things differently to prevent these things from happening. Take ownership of it. Own it.
This election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early...
What about H.R. 2, which was a standalone border bill, which would have secured the border?
...part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungari's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss. Sincerely.
Well, why did you and Joe Biden unwind the Trump policies that led to this happening? Let's keep going.
Said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system.
By the way, shout out to Brett Barrett for jumping right into the immigration topic.
Sending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist, they will tell you we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Brett.
Well,
that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question.
But
there were
that's how the system
90-plus
works.
executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security.
There you go. Ms. Borders was a disaster on the border.
This
and
particular
people lost their lives because of it.
one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what, you got to take responsible for what happened in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite...
She has full-blown TDS. Everything is about Trump. Everything is Trump this, Trump that. Trump did that. Trump spent this on an ad. Trump. These people have no answer for anything but orange man bad. Now, this was in my opinion, this is very damaging for a campaign because she went into the lion's den. Apparently Fox News, no matter what you feel about it, it's not CNN. No matter how you feel about it, it's not CNN. But, and she did a terrible job. Trump went into CNN and dominated. He goes into the lion's den and wherever, and he does a great job. He holds his own, but Kamala, not so much. All right, let's keep going.
My plans for our economy would strengthen our economy. His would make them weaker,
Why do you
would
think more
ignite
people
inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plan,
they trust him because he's already done it before. He's already done the job. He produced great results.
For what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump, people are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
All right, that's just BS. The tax cuts for the billionaires and millionaires, 82% of Americans receive the tax cut, and it benefited the middle class the most. There was a chart that shows very detailed from the IRS that the tax cuts benefited the people making about $50,000 to $100,000 a year. The tax bracket went down for everybody. The top income earning people all the way down to the bottom, tax rates dropped. And then this thing about blowing up the deficit, temporarily increasing the deficit through tax cuts is much better than increasing the deficit by government spending and printing money. All right, let's keep going.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So
that's all they have. I'm not Trump. That's it.
You're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days.
Where is that $25,000 coming from? From you. Me too. All right, there's more.
Exhausted of Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country.
This might be the best part of the interview here, talking about why Americans are unhappy with the direction of the country, and Brett Barrett kept pressing her on that issue.
Rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last...
I love his face right there. He's like, what are you talking about? I mean, come on, tell me. I mean, that's a bad slogan. Turn the page and on something you want. It's a bad look because you've been in power for 3.5 years, and now you're talking about turning the page. Yeah, it's trying to. It's all about Trump. But in reality is she's been out in power for 3.5 years, and when you say it's time to turn the page, people are saying, "Well, we're not going to. We're turning the page on you." and we want to go back to the policies that actually worked.
Last decade,
But you're
people
the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people.
But she said the 18 to 24-year-old group of people are stupid. You remember that?
In fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Respect. That clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
He was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
He didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for
He's blowing up.
Doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump...
The significance of that.
You call Donald Trump... he's misguided. You say now he's unstable.
He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this.
Man. Yeah,
He's not stable?
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again.
This was not about Trump. This was about Joe Biden and how you've worked with this guy for 3.5 years and you knew nothing about his mental decline. But George Clooney saw it way before you did. Yeah.
Including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact.
Yeah, it was open because we didn't want no backbone Mike Pence as his running mate. All right. Now, this is the final clip here.
I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things
There's more to say. I have
there,
much more
there
to
are
say,
a lot
actually.
of things that people want to learn about you and your policies,
Yes.
and that's why we
I
invited
invite
you
everyone
here.
to go to Kamala Harris.
I like how he said you basically told her you made this whole thing about Trump and nothing about what you're going to do as president. That's basically what he said. You spent all this time talking about Trump and nothing about you.
And you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do
And that's why we invited you here,
our economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
And
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to
Yeah, that's he said 4 people said it's time to shut off. Yeah, cut the interview. Four of her people, but she said Trump 57 times. Let's check it out.
Donald Trump's
Democrats voted against that bill.
Donald Trump's administration, even that Donald Trump acted. Donald Trump's from the Trump campaign, if Trump would say he did. It's come out of Donald Trump. An individual, he spent $20 million. Donald Trump, if he preferred to run on a problem, he actually has no plan. And again, his policy was his would make them weaker. His plan, Donald Trump, that had.
You've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump and his vice president, he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, with someone who professes to be a leader and it being about him. And watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean. He's the one who talks about it, suggesting he would turn. What he has been saying about when he's speaking about the American people, that he has repeated it, that he has talked about, disagree with him. This is about Donald Trump being.
You say now
he's unstable. He's unstable. Right? He's not stable.
Let me ask you this.
Donald Trump
After
is.
Georgia minutes of talking to President Biden at a fund debate
Donald
stage.
Trump is unconcerned about Donald Trump. With people who know him.
You get the gist of what's going on there. Nothing but Trump this, Trump that. Again, that was a disaster for her. It was all about Trump. And I think this is just adding on to the collapse of her campaign. But I'm glad she did this. I'm glad she did this interview because it exposes how much little she has to offer as president of the United States. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. See you next time. Thank you. Take care.